Hello guys, it's Bella and welcome back to my channel and welcome to Mystery Week. So I am going to be doing an entire week of Mystery Mondays starting today because today is Monday, or Sunday for some of you, okay, before I get a million comments saying, but it's Sunday. We get it. Time zones. They're a thing. Just kidding. Well, actually I'm not. It's true, but... So definitely make sure that you guys hit the post notification button so that you guys get notified when I upload these videos so that you don't miss one and so you don't miss the rest of my videos. I am doing this mystery week because not only do I want to, but I also want to do it to kind of apologize for how shitty I have been with these videos and just my channel in general lately. I'm sure like every YouTuber can relate to feeling this way, but I have just been so unmotivated lately. So let's just go ahead and get into the first Mystery Monday of Mystery Week. I said that way too happy. People always get mad at me when I'm like happy, but I'm not like happy to be telling these stories. I am just trying to make it not so like dark and scary, you know what I mean? Because they're pretty morbid things that we're talking about. So today we are going to be talking about the murder of Suzanne Jovin. Suzanne Jovin was born on the 26th of January in 1977 in Göttingen, Germany to American parents. I think that I pronounced that wrong. I tried to look up the pronunciation and that's how it said it, but I pronounce everything wrong in these videos. So she did grow up in Germany and she was a very advanced student, very bright. In the 5th grade, Suzanne started learning Latin, and in the 7th grade, she started learning French, and at this time, she was already bilingual and fluent in both English and German. She played both the cello and the piano, and she scored very highly in her double major of chemistry and biology, which was not surprising considering her parents worked as a molecular biologist and cell biologist. Her mother had graduated from Yale, and in 1995, Suzanne decided to follow in her mother's footsteps, and she flew to America and attended Yale herself, as well as doing some volunteer work while she was there. So I think that she started this science degree and went for that because it was, you know, following in her parents' footsteps, similar to what her parents did. But after a little while in this course, she decided it wasn't really for her, and she decided to change her course to a double major in political science and international studies. And then towards the end of her course, she also decided to pursue a career in diplomatic service, and she was also finishing applications to graduate schools. And according to her parents, Suzanne was not interested in money at all. She was more interested in helping people. Suzanne was like a super friendly girl. She was very kind, very well liked. She was always very warm and welcoming and didn't really have any enemies. So she was around 5'5" and she was about 125 pounds, which I converted to kilos, and I believe it's around 55 to 56 kilos. And despite being a little bit petite, she was a very strong and athletic woman. She played squash, she went jogging, skiing, and she also did step aerobics. And despite being like a physically strong, healthy woman, she was also very mentally tough and strong as well. And that makes this case just so much more confusing. So her friends say that the media pretty much depicted her to not her true self, pretty much the opposite of how she was. They depicted her as this frail, shy girl when in fact she was very opinionated. She was never afraid to speak her mind and stick up for what she thought was true and what she believed in. And she was also not shy, not frail. She was a very fit, strong and tough woman. So the night that Suzanne was murdered was the 4th of December in 1998, and our timeline of events starts at 4:15. So at 4:15 p.m. Suzanne went and dropped off her draft for her senior essay, which she wrote about Osama bin Laden, to her advisor. And then after dropping this off, she went and attended an event that she had organized for Best Buddies. Best Buddies had multiple levels, but at the college level, they partnered with the school to get volunteers from the school and partnered them with people from halfway homes to get them involved in the community, because a lot of these adults in the program they had been abandoned by their family and they were struggling to find friendships and to find jobs. So Suzanne organized a pizza party for the local community of best friends, and this was held at the Trinity Lutheran Church on 292 Orange Street. She obviously, because she was running the event and organized the event, got there early to help set it up, and she also stayed late to help clean everything up as well. She was done cleaning at around 8:30, which is when she left with another volunteer who she had offered a lift home, and she gave them a lift home either in a station wagon or a van that she had borrowed from Yale. There's conflicting reports on whether it was a station wagon or a van, but I don't really think it's important to the case. At 8:45 p.m, Suzanne then dropped the vehicle back to the Yale parking lot, which was on the corner of Edward Street and Howe Street, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and then she began walking the 2 blocks back to her apartment, which was on 258 Park Street, and she lived on the 2nd floor of this apartment, and on the 1st floor of the apartment building was a Yale University police substation. At around 8:50 p.m. on her walk home, she passed a group of girls who she knew from Yale and was friends with, and they offered for her to come to the movies with them, but she said that she couldn't, that she was really tired and had a lot of study to do. At around 9:02 p.m. she must have been home in her apartment because she logged into her email to send an email to her friend, which was in German, and she basically said that she was going to lend them some books and she was going to leave them in the lobby of her apartment building. She gave her friend the access code but said that she had to go and pick them up from someone that she had lent them to, along with a CD-ROM. And the weird thing about this was she referred to the person she had to pick them up from as someone. There are conflicting reports as to whether she referred to them as someone or as a friend, but most of the reports I read said that she referred to this person as someone, which is weird because you don't normally lend your things to people that you don't know. That's just a someone, not a friend, but you know, there could have been multiple reasons why she referred to them that way, but she never mentioned who they were, and still to this day, nobody knows who that person that she had to get their books from is. So at 9:10 p.m. she logged out of her email, and I will also mention that it's impossible for us to know if she contacted anyone else through the telephone. She didn't email anyone. She didn't email this mystery person she had to go and pick the books up from, and we can't find out if she called anyone before, after, or at any point at all, because at this point in time all phone calls on Yale's system were not traceable. So then at this point in time, Suzanne realized that she forgot to drop off the keys from the car that she borrowed earlier that evening, the station wagon or van that I mentioned, and so she decided to go and walk back to drop off those keys. And she was wearing the same clothes at this point on the way back to drop off the keys that she'd been wearing earlier to the pizza party, which were some low-cut boots, some jeans, and a maroon jumper. And on her way to go and return the keys, she walked past a classmate, Peter Stein, who she stopped to have a little chat with, which is how we know she was going to return the keys and whatever else. Peter also mentioned that after she dropped off the keys, she had no other plans that night, that she was just tired, ready to go to bed, she was so excited to sleep, and that she did have a few assignments to get done as well. Peter also mentioned that when he saw her, she wasn't wearing a backpack, and she was also holding some paper in her right hand. And if my eyes are super red, they hurt so bad from these lights right now. Every time my eyes are red in a video, people are like, "Are you high? Have you been crying?" I'm fine. Anyway, so she apparently, according to Peter, she was walking normally. She didn't look frightened, excited, scared, whatever, and was walking just at a normal pace. And they spoke between 2 and 3 minutes, between 9:15, 9:22, and then they both went on their way, and she went and dropped the keys off, and she dropped them off at about 9:25 p.m. The next sighting of Suzanne was between 9:25 and 9:30, and she was heading north on College Street, which means that she likely was not returning back to her apartment, or was at least going somewhere on the way to her apartment, because this wasn't the way to her apartment. You could get to her apartment that way, but it was a very roundabout way to get there. And if she was just on the way back to her apartment, well, that just doesn't make sense, because there was a much easier way to get there, like the way that she had gone the first time when she dropped the car off and just walked straight back to her apartment. A female student who had just left the Yale versus Princeton hockey game, who was going to an off-campus party, said that she passed Suzanne on College Road. This girl said that she didn't notice anything was off at the time. She said that she did notice there was a dark-skinned Hispanic or African American with a hoodie on heading north on College Road. She also saw that Suzanne was also heading north on College Street, and that then a few paces behind her, so Suzanne was a few paces behind this male in the hoodie, and then a few paces behind Suzanne was a white male who was wearing glasses. This was the last confirmed sighting of Suzanne, as sometime in the next 30 minutes she was murdered. At 9:55 p.m, two passers-by contacted 911 to report a woman bleeding out on the corner of Edge Hill Road and East Rock Road, and this was about 1.8 miles from the last confirmed sighting of Suzanne. According to 911 records, this call was placed by a couple, but the actual audio for this call has been involved in the Freedom of Information Act requests. This act is a law that basically allows for the full and partial disclosure of previously unreleased information or documents that are controlled by the United States government. But at this particular time, the audio is unavailable, but there is some information from some people who have heard it, and they said that there was the voice of a third person in the background of the call. The couple which placed the call, though, said that the person in the background was a man who was calling out from a car asking for directions. So police arrived within a few minutes at 9:58 p.m, and when they got there, they found that Suzanne had been stabbed 17 times in the back, the neck, and the head, and that her throat had been slit. They also found later in examination that she actually had part of the knife, about 4 to 5 inches of the knife, stuck in her head. She was lying on her stomach and she was fully clothed, and she was found still wearing her watch and her earrings. She also had a dollar bill found in her pocket, and in later investigations found that her wallet was still in her room, which ruled out the possibility of a robbery. Suzanne was taken straight to Yale New Haven Hospital, where she was pronounced dead at 10:26 p.m. It was also approximated that her death had occurred about 15 minutes before police arrived, so at about 9:43 p.m. She had been spotted about 2 miles, which is around 3.2 kilometers away from where she was found dead, walking at around 9:25 and 9:30. So police speculate that she had to have been driven, or she was in a vehicle at some point to get her from where she was last seen walking to where she was found dead, because otherwise she just wouldn't have made the distance. Whether she got in this vehicle unknowingly or whether she got in the vehicle willingly is obviously still unknown. Nearby residents reported hearing a loud argument at around the time of the murder, and some said that they saw a light brown or a tan van parked directly next to where her body was found just before the murder. One witness said that he saw a man in his 20s or 30s who had an athletic build, well-groomed hair, dark pants, and a loose-fitting green jacket running from the scene like his life depended on it. So the first step for police was to find this guy in the green jacket, and also to find the person that she had loaned her books to and had to pick them up from. So they began their investigations immediately and started canvassing the neighborhood. They obviously examined the crime of the scene, but the actions of the police in this case, as with most of the cases that we talk about in this series, have fallen under a lot of scrutiny. The police in this case were terrible, and I was so frustrated reading this case, and I'm sure you guys are going to be as well. They have been accused of mishandling evidence, contaminating evidence, and also withholding evidence that is pertinent to the case. So anyway, moving on to, what the police actually did do in their investigations, and they did collect a few pieces of evidence from the crime scene. The first was a bottle of Fresca. This bottle was found in a bush nearby, and when they examined it and tested it, it had Suzanne's fingerprints on it, as well as the palm print of an unidentified person. During the medical examination, DNA was found under Suzanne's fingertips, and like I mentioned earlier, they also found that the knife that had been used to stab her, 4 to 5 inches of that had broken off inside her skull, which is so incredibly gruesome. Those 4 to 5 inches were non-serrated carbon steel. And according to the Examiner, only 1 of the 17 stabs were fatal. Information on the exact make and model of the knife have never been released. In fact, information on whether there was even a test to find out the make and model of the knife has never been released. And I am so sorry about this fly that is in this video. I have opened the door about 7 times for it, and every time I open the door it stops flying, and I'm just over it, and I can see it flying in front of the camera, and I'm over it. Unfortunately, a lot of the information that I'm telling you guys now was not released to the public until quite a while after Suzanne's murder. And the more research I did, I just could not see any reason why they would need to keep this information private. I feel like they really hindered the case because they stopped people from knowing things, and therefore they stopped people from being able to give any information that they might have known. In Mystery Mondays, I'm sure you guys have noticed that correlation as well, that it's always like, you know, missing people, unsolved murders, shitty police work. There was actually one theory regarding this case about how this could have been a police officer, and that's why they did such a shitty job and why they weren't releasing information. You know, if there's one thing I've learned from Mystery Mondays, it's that it is crazy how often these cases are butchered by the police. The information regarding the Fresca bottle and the prints on it weren't released until April 1st in 2001, which was nearly 3 years after the murder, which is unfortunate because after that information was released, it was found that there was only 1 store in the vicinity that sold Fresca. This was Croz's Market, and this was located on York Street, which was right near Elm Street, which was only 1 block from Suzanne's apartment. And Croz's did have surveillance footage and was open at the time of the murder. However, the New Haven police never claimed to have visited this market and never requested the surveillance footage from this market, which is a huge lead loss if you ask me. Despite public outcry, no employees and no customers from Croz's were ever interviewed, and New Haven police have not extracted and tested the touch DNA from the Fresca bottle. And touch DNA, unlike normal DNA, only needs a very small sample and can be gathered from skin cells left behind on an object. Anyway, moving on, because that's all the information we have on that, because you know. So there are also no witness statements that link Suzanne to getting into or being in a vehicle. Based on the time and distance traveled though, it is assumed that she was in a vehicle and driven to the location that she was murdered. And again, as mentioned previously, it is, the one witness said that there was a brown or tan van parked right next to where her body was found. New Haven police, however, did not release any information regarding this van until the 27th of March in 2001. Faculty at Yale have stated that the New Haven police were asking questions about the van, so there is absolutely no reason why they couldn't have released the information. The reason that they took so long to release the information is unknown. A local newspaper also reported that the New Haven police impounded a brown van as part of the investigation, but of course this has never been confirmed. So as I mentioned before, there was DNA found underneath Suzanne's fingernails, but this information was not released to the public until the 27th of October in 2001. And the reason it was released is because at this time, New Haven police made a request that any friends, acquaintances, you know, faculty members come forward and allow them to test their DNA. And I will mention that none of the times that they released this information super late did they ever explain why they were releasing the information and why they didn't release it sooner. Suzanne's parents actually wrote several letters to the governor of Connecticut complaining about the lack of work that had been done in relation to DNA, and they did get a letter back which explained that there was 12,000 untested samples of DNA that were backlogged. Finally, in November 2009, nearly 11 years after the murder, the DNA was tested and a match had been found. But unfortunately, this DNA was connected or linked to a forensic technician in the Connecticut crime lab because it had been contaminated. Accidentally contaminated. Do you see what I mean about how incredibly frustrating this case is? So there was a task force called the Jovin Task Force which had been assembled. In 2008, the Jovin Task Force came forward and revealed that sometime close to the murder, a witness had come forward to police and said that she had seen a white male running past her and into the church, or into church property. I don't know if that means into the church, but into church property. According to the witness, New Haven police showed her a photo of Yale professor James Vandervelde, who was Suzanne's thesis advisor. They asked her if it was the same man, and when she said no, they brought her into his office to see him in person. She again said that it wasn't the same person, and then the police never contacted her again. The task force set this witness up with a sketch artist, and they drew up a composite of the man that she saw, the suspect, which I will put a photo of on the screen right now, and they put this up around the scene of the murder. But the Jovin Task Force, their thoughts were elsewhere. They were specifically interested in trying to find the person that Suzanne had lent her books to. They theorized that the reason Suzanne referred to this person as someone in her emails was because she didn't know them well. Although it could also be because she didn't want her friend to know who it was for some reason, which I honestly think is more likely. I personally don't often lend things to people that I don't know, and I feel like most people don't lend things to people that they don't know. I feel like someone who doesn't know you isn't gonna ask to borrow your stuff anyway, but this person never came forward to return the books, never came forward with their name or anything, so obviously, as I said before, we don't know who this is. I'm sorry that this information is so all over the place, but this case is pretty all over the place, and that is because of how botched the investigation was. It's hard to judge the investigations because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I'm not a police officer, so I guess in that respect I also can't judge it because I don't know why they make the decisions that they make. But also from a bystander's point of view, it is really hard to respect some of the decisions they make and hard to understand why they make some of the decisions that they make. The contamination of the DNA was really bad. Most of the things that happened in this case were bad, but the way that they handled the single and only suspect that they had was also especially bad. Everything about not only the suspect they had, but the way they treated the suspect they had, they kind of zoned in on him and didn't focus on anything or anyone else. They just wanted this guy to be guilty for no reason. There was no evidence at all that this guy had anything to do with it. It was Professor James Vandervelde, who we mentioned earlier. When they tried to show that witness the photo, she said it wasn't him, so they showed him to her in person. She said it wasn't him, and then they never contacted that witness again. So as per usual in these cases, the people that are closest to the victim are obviously looked at first, and Suzanne did have a boyfriend at the time of the murder, but he was on a 4-hour train ride from New York City at the time, so he was obviously cleared. Anyway, back to James. Just 4 days after the murder, his name was leaked to the media as the prime suspect. They didn't say his name directly in the press, but they did say that it was Suzanne's political science instructor and advisor, which was James Vandervelde. And as a result, his spring classes at Yale were cancelled. So the New Haven police questioned friends, instructors, and people on campus, but for some unknown reason, they theorized that she was having an affair with her professor, James Vandervelde. Their other theory was that he was interested and she wasn't. But Suzanne's friends and boyfriend all say that that was totally untrue. So I have no idea why police theorized this or where the theory came from, but everyone said that this was the complete opposite. Suzanne's friends said that she was actually having problems with him because she felt like he just brushed her off and he didn't dedicate enough time to her or her essay. Suzanne had visited her parents in California for Thanksgiving, and her parents mentioned that while she was there, she actually indicated that she was having problems with him specifically. She actually said that she resented the lack of mentoring she got from him. But for some reason, the police rolled with James Vandervelde as the prime suspect. The sergeant with the New Haven police at the time that they were investigating this actually admitted in an interview that they had no evidence at all to tie him to this, and that there was actually nothing to tie him to the case at all. The police questioned Vandervelde 4 days after the murder, and at this time he said that it was just a brief chat and they had not indicated to him at all that he was a suspect in any way. The very next night though, police had him back in again. They questioned him for 4 hours very aggressively and started accusing him of the murder. Vandervelde chose not to call a lawyer. He offered them the keys to his apartment, his car. He also offered to do a polygraph and offered to give blood samples or give a blood test. According to Vandervelde's lawyer, who he hired after this incident, they searched his car but never searched his apartment. They also didn't administer a polygraph test or blood tests. And because of all of this, because he was a suspect, his time at Yale had ended and he was asked to leave. But in December of 2000, because of his insistence and also his colleagues' insistence, Yale actually hired their own private investigator to look into the matter. They hired a man named Andrew. I'm not even going to say his last name because I know that I will butcher it. And he was previously the chief investigator with the State District Attorney's Office in New York. By the way, did I say that? Did I say New York? They also hired a Patrick Harnett, and he was a former commanding officer for the New Haven Police Major Crime Squad. So it was at the insistence of these two private investigators that the New Haven Police finally allowed the DNA, or finally tested the DNA under Suzanne's fingerprints, as well as the palm print on the Fresca bottle, neither of which matched James Vandervelde. And despite this, and despite a lack of evidence to support their theory that James Vandervelde had anything to do with this, they still continued to look into him and focus on him, might I add. He was their only suspect. In December of 2000, Vandervelde was employed by the Navy, and the New Haven police went as far as to contact them and urge them to change their mind. They actually traveled all the way to Washington, D.C. to meet with them to basically ask them to reconsider. But the Navy chose not to sever ties with Vandervelde, fortunately. So after this happened, Vandervelde started a strong letter writing campaign, and he was urging the Connecticut State Cold Case team to take over this case, which they refused to do. I actually feel so bad for this guy because it's just like the police are trying to destroy his life for no reason. Like, I wonder if someone just didn't like him, like one of the officers just didn't like him. I was just trying to convince everyone that it was him. I don't know, but I just feel so bad for him. I cannot put my finger on why they focused on this guy so hard and like tried to destroy his life. In December of 2006, 8 years after the murder and 6 years after the letters, the Connecticut State Cold Case Department finally took over the case. But for some reason, the case was never added to their website, and there was never any reward offered for information regarding the murder. There was also never any information on arrests regarding the case. Vandervelde was obviously angry about this, so he started writing more letters about how angry he was about the lack of action they took on this case. So then on the 29th of November in 2007, the Assistant State's Attorney James Clark admitted that in June of that year, the case had been returned to the New Haven police. And they also stated that there was 4 retired detectives looking into the case. On December 7th in 2001, Vandervelde actually sued the New Haven police for civil rights violations. Yale was added as a defendant on April 15th in 2003. The U.S. District Court Judge Robert Chattaney dismissed the federal claims with prejudice and the state law claims without prejudice on the 15th of March in 2004. In May of 2006, Vandervelde asked the judge to reconsider, so on June 11th in 2007, the claims were reinstated. On the 3rd of June in 2013, Yale and the New Haven police agreed on a monetary settlement. The state's attorney at the time admitted for the first time that James Vandervelde was no longer a suspect. But at this point in time, I feel like it didn't really matter. The damage had been done. done. He had to go through years of scrutiny and just so many years of dealing with this, contacting different people, being fired from his job, having the police trying to get him fired from his new job, and it damaged his career irreparably almost. So although the amount of money that Yale had to pay Vandervelde is undisclosed, it is public record that the New Haven police had to pay him damages of $200,000. And that is that. So now let's just get into theories, because there are of course a few other theories regarding this case. Now, the first theory of this is completely ridiculous. I'm sure you guys are going to find it ridiculous as well, but at the very start of this video I mentioned that she handed in her assignment, which was on Osama bin Laden. So some people think that Al-Qaeda did this. This theory is so ridiculous to me that I'm not even going to get into it, because I doubt Al-Qaeda is trying to go after a 21-year-old girl who made a college report on him. Some people went as far as to say she was the first 9/11 victim, which is incredibly ridiculous in my opinion. Next theory is about a possible suspect. On December 8th in 2012, some locals gave the Jovin task force some evidence to suggest that there was a suspect that could have had something to do with Suzanne's murder. But the task force denied to pursue this lead. This is actually one of the biggest theories in regards to who murdered Suzanne. And on most sites, the suspect's name is hidden behind a pseudonym called Billy, which I am actually going to continue to use because he did commit suicide. So just out of respect, I'm going to use the pseudonym of Billy because he was never a suspect and it obviously is not confirmed that he did this. And all of the evidence to suggest that he had anything to do with this is circumstantial. So Billy, allegedly, according to some former acquaintances, had some issues when it came to women. He had really bad anger issues and he would scream really loudly at women who rejected him. He also behaved extremely oddly around women at his workplace. One woman in particular actually called the police on Billy, and the police spoke to him and said that he needed to control himself because it was inappropriate the way that he was acting. A friend later actually reported that Billy was obsessive over the Suzanne case and that the Suzanne case was actually the reason that he had trouble maintaining a relationship with any women. I think it is important to note as well that it is reported that he had some mental issues, but it has never been confirmed whether this has been diagnosed or if people just assumed based on the way that he had been acting. On the night of the murder, Billy reportedly said to his roommate, "They will never catch me." When Billy died, a student contacted his family and reportedly they knew that he was calling about Billy's ties to Suzanne's murder. They also said that they were wiping the hard drives to his computer. And there's also, as I mentioned, a lot of circumstantial evidence which actually links Billy to this murder. So first of all, they both spoke German and her email to her friend was in German. Second, he attended Yale at the same time of Suzanne's murder. He owned a green jacket which matched the description of the witness who saw a man in a loose-fitting green jacket sprinting from the scene of the crime. And apparently before his suicide, he contacted a lawyer to see whether he could transfer his assets to his niece, stating apparently they're out to get me. Some people also say that Billy looks similar to the composite sketches that the witness had drawn. The Jovin task force got that witness to draw. But in 2012, Billy also did email a friend saying that he had nothing to do with the murder. I also did read something about a class that he was in where he had to use knives, and one of these knives could have been used in order to kill her, but I also read that the specific thing that he did with these knives, it's very unlikely that there was a knife big enough to match it to the one that was lodged in Suzanne's skull. So that's all for that theory. Another theory is that this had to do with an officer. I mentioned this before. This is because of the botched job that the police did, the absolute horrible job that they did, not releasing evidence, contaminating evidence. That was probably an accident, but you never know. And this theory also comes around because of the fact that Suzanne, as I mentioned, lived on the second floor of her apartment, and on the first floor was the police department, or subdivision of the police department. So I think it's likely to assume that she may have had conversations with some of these police officers at some point, passing them, or, you know, wherever, whatever. Maybe one of the cops disliked her, or maybe one of them liked her and she did not share those feelings because she did have a boyfriend. Honestly, I don't believe this theory, because I think that a botched listen, the police job was botched, but I think it's more likely they would have, rather than not release the information, they would have released tainted information or something to steer them away from the police, to kind of point towards you know what? They did point to Vandervelde really hard, so maybe they were pointing to Vandervelde really hard because they were trying to point away from themselves. Didn't even think about that. Anyway, the theory goes they did a really shitty job to try and cover it up. Maybe they tried to pin Vandervelde so that nobody would look into the police, because if they have a suspect, if they've arrested someone, then nobody's looking elsewhere. They think the case is solved. So the next theory is that this was just a total stranger that murdered Suzanne, and it was a random murder. It's possible that somebody attempted to abduct or assault her and that she fought back, and so that is why they killed her. Maybe they lashed out when she fought back. As I said, when she was last seen, there was a man in front of her and a man behind her. She didn't appear to be distressed at all in this sighting, but 20 minutes later she was found dead. As the theory goes, it's possible that she was either forced into the vehicle or coaxed into the vehicle. I honestly don't think that she would have gotten into the vehicle willingly, because, well, in this theory, I don't believe she would have gotten into the vehicle willingly, because, I mean, why would she? She didn't know anyone that was there. And the whole thing was very sudden. She was fine. She was just walking one minute, and then the next minute she showed up dead. So this is the last theory, and this theory is that the person that she mentioned in the email is the person who murdered her, the person that she had to go and pick her books up from, that she had loaned them to. The email was sent at 9:02 p.m. and it was written in German, as I said, and it actually wasn't translated to English for quite some time after the murder took place. I think it was like 6 months or something it took to get this translated, between 6 months to a year. In this email, as I mentioned, she said to her friend that she was going to let her borrow some books, gave her friend the access code, but said that she first had to go and pick the books up from someone that she had lent them to earlier. In this email, she refers to the person she had to go and pick the books up from as someone, although some people think she referred to them as friend, but I think it's more commonly believed that she referred to them as someone. I know it's a small difference whether she referred to them as someone or a friend, but I think this does, well, in the theories I've read, it makes a big difference. People theorize that her calling them or referring to them as someone means that she didn't know them, or led people to believe that she didn't know this person that she had lent the books to. But as I have mentioned multiple times in this video, you don't normally lend things to people that you don't know. And she must have known them well enough to have a way to get in contact with them to pick the books up from her, whether that was via the telephone, which we can't trace, or a message of some kind. But as I said, she didn't send any other emails that night, and we also don't know if she made a call to this person, because calls were untraceable at that time. Honestly, even if she did refer to them as someone, I don't think that necessarily means that she doesn't know them. She might not have wanted her friend to know who they were for whatever reason. Maybe their friend knows who they were. Maybe she was, the person that she was picking the books up from was, maybe she was seeing them behind her boyfriend's back and she didn't anyone to know who it was, or, there could have been a whole multiple different reasons. Maybe her friend didn't like this person, so she just didn't want to mention who it was. Maybe it was just, there was no rhyme or reason to her saying someone. She doesn't have to say, I'm going to pick them up from a friend. She's just saying, oh, I've got to go pick my books up from someone. That is definitely something I would say, just offhanded. I've got to go pick my books up from someone. rather than I've got to go pick my books up from a friend. I think the only reason people are really looking into it is because obviously she is dead now. So what we do know, as I mentioned, is on the way home she was walking north on College Road, which is not the way back to her apartment, but you can get back to her apartment that way, but it's a very long-winded way. So some people theorize, I also believe this as well, maybe the reason that she was taking that long way was because she decided to stop and pick up those books from this person on the way back to her apartment. Maybe she wanted to go for a walk, but this seems unlikely to me because she told everyone she was tired and that she had assignments to do. So I do think that maybe the reason she was taking this long way was to go and pick up her books, and maybe she was abducted on the way, or maybe the person who she offered the books to offered to drive her, saw her on the way to their apartment and offered to drive her, and this person is the person who murdered her. Maybe this person is like a secret lover of hers or something. She was cheating on her boyfriend, the person was jealous. I don't know. I can't think of like who it could be, why this person would want to murder her, because we don't know who it is. But I would love to hear your theories on who you think this person could be in her life, why they might have wanted to murder her, what theories you have that I didn't mention, or what information I missed if I did miss any. I absolutely love talking to you guys in the comments about your theories, because honestly, you guys come up with the most plausible theories that makes so much sense, and I just love to read them. It's like you guys are detectives, I swear. Also, another theory that I just thought of about this person she was picking the books up from, maybe she wasn't like going to their apartment to pick these books up. Maybe she was meeting them on the street outside a shop or something, and they drove there, she walked, so they offered to give her a ride home, but they weren't actually giving her a ride home. They got her in the car and then took her to murder her. I feel like that makes the most sense to me and is probably the most likely theory. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you turn my post notifications on so you don't miss my next one, which will be tomorrow. And hopefully I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!